All right, this is the Kefka quarterfinals. Um, Delial has advanced normally, and Cliffy and Dalamar subbed in for myself and Metis when we were all inactive. And Cliffy defeated Dalamar 2-1 in a video, the final game of which went up. And now Cliffy is facing Delial in the quarterfinals. The winner faces Akiyama in the semis, and the winner of that faces Turds in the finals. Now, I saw they were playing because I received a message from Delhi saying, "You were musing about bad randoms in your last video. I'd like to put this one forth. A real inability to deal with nines." Maybe that's what he said? I actually closed that. So if that's not what he said, then this is great because we can misinterpret him and go, "What are you talking about? 8739, 9822? That covers the nines in their hand. Crazy person." Let's just pretend that's the case. Um, but A933 and 7 is covered. If you look at Deli's hand, I notice he had two corners for 7, so he uses one of them. If you're Cliffy here, then your corner for 7 is covered, and your corner for 3A isn't very good because the opponent, Deli, is 9A22, but also, 3 is blocked, right? One of the benefits of playing in a corner is the other person does not have natural access. Man, I am not going to be saying sharp triple triad things today. You always know when you start saying stuff like, when someone plays in this square, the other person cannot play in this square, that you're maybe not super sharp about the game at the moment. But we'll see if we get somewhere. Another natural thing is 5, 8, 8, 4, and 1, but that is well covered. So I think Cliffy does not have some natural way to play. And when there is not a natural way to play, a weak corner can be an annoying thing to face. Because there's sort of, I was talking recently about styles. There's more interactive and more kind of uninteractive. Maybe a better way is there's like, let's say, reactive. There are moves that like say, okay, how can I set up or deal with what you're doing? And there are moves, I think Broccoli in an article had reactive versus intuitive, and that actually might be an okay way of saying this, where intuitive is, for our purposes, playing cards in a way that works well with your hand or leaves the game uninteracted with. Leaves the game kind of saying, I think I can deal with the ways you could play around your card. I don't need to deal with it. I can go do other stuff. So, yeah, let's use the Broccoli terminology, reactive versus intuitive. When you see a starter like this, you don't have to react. There's nothing about this starter that says, I must react to this. I have difficulty dealing with this. So you start looking for moves more on the intuitive end of the spectrum. But if you have no natural corners or cards that play well off each other, nothing. I hate these types of moves in general for this purpose, but a lot of people like them, kind of something in 4 or 8, where you essentially play as if you were first turn playing a defensive side kind of thing. If you don't have something like that, it can be very hard to find an intuitive move, and there is nothing to react to. These random low numbers facing out makes it very difficult to play a reactive move. So I think actually one of the reasons I have trouble against Delhi is because he plays starters like this where I don't have anything to bite my teeth into, right? I like to react to a move, and he doesn't give me stuff to react to. And if you have some like really obvious intuitive type move, some like move that says, I'm not reacting, I'm playing my own corner or my own side, setting my stuff up, then that's fine. But he tends to do it either blocking the square I'd want to do intuitive things in, or in a part of the board where I don't have naturally intuitive responses. Maybe my intuitive move would be in 2, 3, or 6, and now those squares aren't really available in the same way. And suddenly I'm left without something normal to do. Right, Cliffy goes in 2, and that's kind of interesting because the 6399 in general plays so badly against the 9A22, but here it plays a little better because the 9A22 no longer has the capture from below it. So the standard thing to do if we're Delhi is to go in 6. Do we have a card to put in 6 that isn't susceptible to combo? And the answer is yes, but only one card. A448 can be comboed in 9, and there isn't a combo back. 48A5 can be comboed in 9, and again, there is no combo back. This time with 7749 combos the A, 573A combos the 8. 8739 is also comboed by A933. So despite the fact that Deli put out a 2, he actually only has one kind of lock-in move, and it puts out more 2s. And if you use up 9A22, then you suddenly have a lot less in your hand to attack the board with, right? That's a card that has an attack in 1 that your hand would be giving up on. Okay, but there are other ways to play this. Bahamut in 1, I think, is a very natural move, saying, I will take safety here. I often say, if first turn is down 6-4, but has a safe card, and second turn doesn't have a six card in this line of cards, 1, 2, 3, first turn's usually ahead. Sorry, it's usually a balanced game. So my like default assumption is, well, one default assumption would be this is a little better than that, right? This is, we're not actually down 6-4 and we have the safe card. I don't think that's true because anyone who goes in 6, whoever goes in 6 at any point, is flipping 3. So it actually plays out very similarly to the other situation. But Bahamut 1, my kind of heuristic here would say that should be a balanced game. One thing I worry about is that A448 might not be able to land in 5, right? So you might not actually have threats on both their cards, because if it lands in 5, it can get comboed either a plus wall in 4 or a plus wall in 8. And that might mean it is 5-5 and you have the safe card and kind of effectively two things to attack, either a card to lock in or a card to attack, but you don't really have the attack there. Which means from Cliffy's perspective, maybe it would be favorable if he played in 6 at the end if Deli doesn't have 5. So normally I'd say 1 should be a path to a kind of balanced game and likely a tie. But here, I think 1's a little dangerous. I think if you go 1 and they go, let's say, 5, 8, 8, 4, and 6, I don't know what you want to do there. I don't see an obvious thing to do. That doesn't mean it's bad. There's probably ties there. But I think where that kind of move is normally, this is balanced. If the opponent finds a really good move, maybe you have to be careful not to lose. If the opponent finds a bad move, maybe you have winning chances. Instead, here I would say, after that move, I would expect to be clearly on the back foot. What else is there to think about? We should make sure what rules are on. All rules are on. Okay. So it turned out Deli was right. I kind of laughed at the whole has trouble dealing with 9s thing, but actually these 9s are a huge problem. Once again, Deli with the better instincts for how numbers work. So I think the two standard things to do are Bahamut in 1 or 9A22 in 6. And both look really dangerous to me. Now, I always undervalue every position. So if I think a position is favorable, it's usually like close to winning. If I think a position is close to winning, there's a very good chance it's winning. If I think a position is really dangerous, it's worse, but not lost usually. Um, and so if I think that's very dangerous, it probably means it holds. I think, be choosing between those moves. I don't think there's a setup in 4, and I don't. Okay, can Cliffy interact with the board well? Yeah, I think he can. I think he's threatening like 5, 8, 8, 4, and 6, something like that. Right? It's not that he can't capture in 6, or if he does, we have stuff to play against. We don't necessarily have stuff to play against. I was thinking, if there's no way Cliffy can interact well with the board, even if you can't, you can make some move in like 7. This is the kind of spot where moves in 7 can make sense, where there are some weak numbers facing out that you can't interact with because they punish, but also if they interact with you punish, there can be reason to play in the distance and leave those squares open if you have a card to use there that A, isn't just terrible to put there, and B, leaves you with the cards you need to be able to punish. But I don't think that's the case here, so I think you're kind of choosing between 1 and 6. And this is clunky. Cliffy's move in 2 was a good move, and the kind of move I just do not consider. Because it feels to me like, oh, that could. Okay, Deli should also consider 9A22 in 1. I didn't mention this move. I think it is less appealing, but worth considering. You have some attack against a lot of the captures. 5, 8, 8, 4 gives you a plus in 5, two different ways. In 4, 5, 8, 8, 4, and 4. 7749 gives you a same wall in 7, and the other two cards at least give you something to attack. So I think that's possible as well. I think you might be able to go 1 with 9A22 as well, though I'd still be very worried about 6. Right. Delhi has picked up Bahamut. He's probably going to put it in 1. I think that's probably the best of the 3 choices. Okay. Well, once again, I am a genius who is always correct about everything. That is a extremely combative move. So I have a bunch of things just in my head here. One is Delhi has a plus in 5 that can be comboed back multiple ways, right? 573A and 6 combos it back, A933 and 8 combos it back. 6 is more relevant. It's hard to play 8 immediately without giving so many free squares, but 6 is appealing. However, because Delhi's plus is strong to 4 and not strong to 2, the combo back doesn't necessarily flip everything unless Cliffy puts a card in 1 with a 3 facing down, then it potentially would combo the extra stuff, a 3 or less. Cliffy has 2 cards that can do that. So this is just going to be a position that's hard to calculate, and I'm not going to do all the calculations. But there is a big difference between Cliffy puts a card in 1 that's weak to 4 or not. I think Delhi is essentially banking on the fact that Cliffy cannot play 1. Anything Cliffy puts in 1 that is not weak to 4 is weak to 2. So if Cliffy puts either of his bottom 2 cards in 1, Delhi has the combo in 5, and he will at least have locked in 1 and 2. And something I missed, if 573A lands in 6, that is actually comboed back by 9A22 and 9. Okay, so if Cliffy puts something weak to 2 and strong to 4 and 1, Delhi combos. If Cliffy doesn't take 7 immediately, 6 immediately, Delhi likely blocks it. Of course, Cliffy has also a threat in 8. Those lines are very scary. I'd be very curious what happens if like 5-8-8-4 and 1. Like, say 5-8-8-4 and 1, Delhi plays, let's say 8-7-3-9 and 5. What happens if Cliffy plays like 7-7-4-9 and 7, just leaving both his combos open? Okay, in that spot, Delhi can block 8 because he can combo back the 6 combo. Okay, so what if Cliffy takes the 6 combo? So if Delhi combos back, Cliffy can combo an 8. But then, Delhi doesn't combo back, he leaves it open. Cliffy will have to block 9 on the final turn, and 9A22 landing in 8 actually does combo back 8-7-3-9 and 5. Okay, so maybe Cliffy should not touch 1. Now, there's many things you can do if you don't want to touch 1, right? You have safety in 7. You might not want to give up A933. That's a pretty valuable card. You could try to snag in 6. I keep mentioning 5-8-8-4 and 6. Now might be a good time. It is conceding a potential combo for you later, but as we've seen, we can't land that combo all that much, and Delhi can land it in return sometimes, or can punish it in annoying ways. Getting rid of it might be useful. There might be some upside to 5-8-8-4 and 6. It's a card we know lands well there and annoyingly for Delhi's hand. On the other hand, like there's a very good chance I'm mentioning losses. This is an extremely complex position. I am saying this move looks promising. That doesn't mean you can play it without extensive calculation. But I think the quick view of 5-8-8-4 and 6 is if Delhi goes in 1, well, still, your only capture of 5 is with A933, and that gets comboed back in a pretty rough way. Um, no, but it doesn't, because for Deli to capture 2, he needs to have used 9A22. So if you go 6 and Deli goes 9A221, you can go A933 and 5, and you lead 6-4 with only one thing Deli can attack, and you have pretty good side to side cards for that endgame. That's not the deepest calculation, but it is definitely promising. Um, and if Deli goes in 1 with not 9A22, then you do not need to block 5 with A933. You can play something else. You can play with a 4 down that doesn't get comboed. You can play 7-7-4-9. And I think that's pretty promising as well. So I think if Cliffy goes 6, Deli should not want to go 1. I think it's promising. I'm just not going to be able to calculate further right now, especially while talking. But I'm not the sharpest at the moment. But I think 6 is strong. It's so interesting. Like, my instinct playing this position after the first 2 moves would have been like, this is trouble. Let's batten down the hatches. We'll play 1. We'll grab 1 safe card. I think it's difficult after 6. Basically, I think 6 is just a problem. Um, but I think we got to do it. Incidentally, if 6 is just a problem, maybe the right answer was just to play in 6 on turn 3. Like, I thought those lines looked uglier, but maybe having a card land in 6 that isn't 5-8-A-4, that is something we can take back, the 9-A-2-2, actually has really big equity here. But Deli's instinct's so different, and it just speaks to how Deli has a much better chance of winning games like this than I do. And I'm not sure he has a bigger chance of losing it. Like, I'm not sure this has bigger losing odds than the move I played. I have no idea. But he definitely has more winning odds than I would playing this game. All right, Cliffy really taking his time. Cliffy tends to play pretty quick, but this is a very complex position. I now think he's probably going to time. Um, yeah, looks like he's going to. I should probably screenshot just so we have it. And then let's make sure he didn't play. Yeah, he did not play. All right, I'm going to pause the recording for a bit as stuff gets figured out. Um, Weird position, complicated. I'll probably go pop up the solver just out of curiosity while I'm gone. And we will be back soon or immediately for you. Unless the video ends, in which case, not so immediately. All right. So on the last game, they just agreed to play another game. So there were 4 moves we considered after the first 2 moves. I had 2 ideas in 1 idea in 6, and there was Deli's move in 4. Now, of those 4 moves, 3 of them tied, and 1 of them lost. So, a fun game for you, before we continue, is to officially pick which one you think was the loss. The 4 moves were Bahamut in 1, 4-8-A-5 in 1. This is move 3 of last game. Bahamut in 4, 4-8-A-5 in 4, the move in the game. 9-A-2-2 in 6, or 9-A-2-2 in 1. One of those 4 moves was losing. 3 of them tied. I'm going to give the answer now. So if you want to figure it out, you can go back and look or whatever. The answer is 9-A-2-2 in 6 was the loss. So no, indeed, we should not have been rushing to block 6, and it lost to 5-7-3-A and 9. What follows is Deli's move was not losing. So Deli was not lost there or anything. But 5-8-A-4 and 6, my idea for Cliffy, was the best move, and Deli had only 1 tie in that position. And it may or may not be obvious to you what it was. I'll say what it was shortly, so you have time to go back and look if you want to think about it. But it was 9-A-2-2 and 1. It was a move I had thought, ooh, that looks like it leads to a dangerous position, but apparently a defensible one, and I just needed to calculate a few moves further. So we're on to game 2. Game 1 was an interesting one. I should put it in my database, shouldn't I? And I'm pleased that, like, if someone's going to time, it's nice that it's not in a position where there's, like, someone's lost, right? It's relatively uncontroversial here. Incidentally, Delhi currently leads the series 1-0. Uh, okay, what was the game? A826, 4885. Sorry that I'm wasting your time saying this out. 922 verse 6399 573A 8933 7749 5884. And the move order as we had it was A8263 63992 48854 and Cliffy timed out. Agreed. Draw. All right. That all looks good. I can get rid of my screenshot of the position after 3 moves. And we're on to our next game. Let's look at Cliffy's hand's directional strengths because Delhi has starter, and that's usually what you want to check so you know what you're up against. Okay, 9 to the left, A to the right. Potential weakness up. I see a lot of 2s and 3s going up in a way that I didn't like immediately spot a weakness left or right. And down there's an A, but then there's a big drop off too. So Delhi should want an up-down game. Except if we look at Delhi's hand, maybe he shouldn't. Clunky. All right, one thing I note is Cliffy's main up card has a 4 facing down. And so if Delhi's A744 is in his hand, he might be able to scare that card off. It might make it really hard for it to take stuff. For instance, if you played like, I don't know, 3699 and 1. All right, he just uses A744 immediately. But if you'd played 3699 and 1, maybe you scare off Cliffy ever taking in 4, but maybe you don't, because A744 can just get comboed back. Okay, probably not a great idea. Just one thing I noticed. Anytime the cue I had to look for stuff like that, which is not to say it was a good idea, but I think it can be useful, and it's useful to have the train of thought that leads there. Because when you hear someone talk or just say what they think the best moves are, often they give the move, and maybe you can start figuring out variations and see why it works. But that still doesn't mean you have the train of thought to get there, right? If you know, like, you're playing some game, whatever, you say you have to pick colors red, blue, yellow, right? And someone goes yellow, and you're like, well, I thought they should have picked blue, right? And then you start figuring out what happens when they pick yellow, and it comes to you, okay, yellow was the right pick. It Yellow now makes sense to you given all this added calculation. But without the added calculation, you never get to yellow, if that makes sense. So, what are the clues that you would start taking yellow seriously such that you do all that follow up thinking about yellow if yellow didn't strike you as serious? I think a really important thing is not just to have explanations for moves, it's to have what in the position started drawing me to that move such that if a player isn't drawn to it, they could notice it. And so the thing I was thinking about here was Cliffy has minimal up and down power. He's really reliant on 1 or maybe 2 cards in each of those directions. And that means anytime he has to capture something going up, if we place something in the top row, for instance, he has a number facing down. And he only has 1 or 2 numbers that he can have facing down. And specifically, if we play 3699, which is a 9 facing down, he only has 1 number that can capture it, 1 card that can capture it. And so he only has 1 number that can be facing down. And as long as we can be under that, we can have a reliable combo, right? If we can play off that number. So anytime I see a hand where I'm like, oh, this person only has 1 card that can do this thing, if that card's backside I can target combo wise, I can play against this weakness. The cue is A548 was the only thing with serious up power. Do I have combo play against the number it has opposite its high number? Yes, I do. I can play against that 4, so maybe I can set up against it. That doesn't mean this was a good move, because after 3699 and 1, if Cliffy takes in 4 and Delhi combos in 7, Cliffy could combo back in 8, and I believe there the combo chain ends. So it turned out in this case, bad idea. But I think it's worth going, what about the idea makes it potentially appealing? And how could we, in situations where it would be better, how would we be able to find this move? Now, we're thinking very directionally, and so we may notice Cliffy just used all of his down power up. So I'm immediately trying to get like 6A, 1, 9, and 8 working, but it doesn't quite work. But I really want something like that to work because I notice A, that locks in our card in 7, and B, Cliffy has no downs. But I don't think we can take advantage of it here. Huh. Cliffy also has no ups. There's a game I played against Deli. It was for that tournament where you have to play 2 games, one closed, one open, but you make the hand for the opponent, but you have to switch hands after. So you're sort of deciding, do I want to give my opponent a good hand in, like, do I want to screw them in closed or screw them in open kind of thing? Anyway, Deli played an adjacent corner against me in that, and I just kind of assumed he could recapture and he couldn't, so I missed the winning line. And it was the best try. He was lost from the hands because he had given me a much better open hand than I had given him. But Deli does not have a way to recapture in 4. In fact, 4 is a sorry, Cliffy. 4 is a dead square for Cliffy. So, can Deli play 2? And the answer is Cliffy has a ton of combo play against 2. So Deli could play 3-6-9-9, but any other card actually walks into combos. Now, I'm thinking you still want to do it. I think you want to play 8-3-5A and 2. Because if Cliffy takes the combo in 1 with 2-9-6-9, you have a same wall in 6. Now, leaving open combo potential is scary. So I think more likely after you go 2, maybe Cliffy goes 8. But then you go 4, and you've locked in both. Well, you may have locked in both 1 and 7. You may not have. It gets real complicated there. You can combo anything Cliffy puts in 8. So that game is just a mess, right? Except 3A5-8. But if 8-7-3-9 lands in 8, you have 3-6-9-9 and 9 if you need it. If 2-9-6-9 and 8, you have 6A-1-9. If 8-5-4-8 and 8, you have 6-5-6A. But if 3A5-8 and 8, but then you have 6-5-6A in either 4 or 5, that game is chaos. I think you probably just block 3 there and leave 4 and 5 open. No, but then you have 3-6-9-9. That combo is 3-8-5-8. You do have a combo against everything. For some reason, I did not notice that. So if I'm Deli, I think I probably go for 2, especially because if I'm Deli, I'm a much bigger risk taker than I am if I'm me. So if like we're combining me and Deli, I think the move you do is 2, because I think from my perspective, I think 2 is sound, right? I think it's like the right thing to do in this kind of setup. And if you're Deli, you trust your calculations and are willing to play moves that leave a lot of combo potential on the board in a way that I tend to try to keep it more under control. But that's not really the right way of saying it, because what is under control for Deli is a wider range than what is under control for me. So I think you go Odin 2 here. But there's so many squares that are appealing. Like if you can block 8, you lock in 7, but you can't really block 8. If you can block 4, 4 looks pretty bad actually. But maybe he's considering moves in 3, 6, or 9 that I'm not looking at. Deli also plays in 5 a lot more than I do. But I think you go 2 here. And I'm going to change locations, so we're going to pause the video for a moment so you don't hear me clattering about. All right, I think we've reorganized ourselves. So wait, no. Yeah, no, we have. Okay. What I really like so far in these games is we just have really difficult move 3 decisions. Like, there's not clear paths. Cliffy sort of, I think, so Cliffy tends to play quickly. And he plays quickly in a way that makes me think sometimes it's vulnerable to just calculation. Just like maybe Deli can play two here and Cliffy just has nothing, and maybe Deli wins. Like maybe two is just winning. But he also makes these decisions where he puts out high numbers in ways I don't expect that create more challenge than I expect it to. And so, like, his 6-3-9-9 and 2 last game, I think was really good. This move, I'm more skeptical of, but I'm not sure of myself at all. I think he does a really nice job of giving you clunky, awkward situations to deal with that are just both like generally viable. You look at how he plays the late game, and he generally like he finds the standard moves, and he finds Deli takes four. So there's a same wall in two. There's a plus wall in eight. Both of those flip extra cards. What is this? I don't understand. This is very much not the move I predicted here. Now, anything in eight, you still have combo play against. Okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be back in a moment. But this is. I don't know what's going on. My instincts are very unclear here. Uh, I will be back. Okay, we're back. Cliffy did play the same wall in two, and I guess now we got to try to figure out what Deli's idea was. Um, if he is 3-6-9-9 and 6-A-1-9 in hand, he does, I think, control 8. But not necessarily, right? Because the idea is he can combo anything put in 8. Therefore, the card left in his hand to play is Odin, so we could play Odin in 5. But if he plays Odin in 5, then he no longer necessarily has 6A19 and 9 because 2969 now has a plus and 6. But no, it doesn't, because the only time Deli would play 6A19 and 9 is if Cliffy played 2969 and 8, in which case Cliffy would not have 2969 ready to play in 6. But it would allow a combo from 3A, 8, and 6 as well. So if Deli goes 8-3-5A and 5, Cliffy can play 2969 and 8. Deli cannot combo back. Therefore, Deli should leave the combo open, and he should play 3699 in 1. But then he loses. Cliffy plays a 9, and 6A19 can't take enough things. Yeah. So the line I'm giving here is Odin in 5. The current score is 6-4 Cliffy. Deli takes a 6-4 lead. 2969 and 8. That combos through 7 to flip 4 and take a 6-4 lead back. Deli goes 3699 in 3 because if he starts at 9, he gets comboed by 3A58 Kane, the Xenogears card. But then Cliffy can play in 7, and 6A19 is dead in 6, and Deli's still down 6-4. So Deli needs something better than Odin in 5. Now you could just go at the top. 8739 is the only thing that can like flip your stuff, and you have pretty good play against that. So maybe you can just play like Odin 3. All right, Deli goes way more off the beaten path. My guess here was Odin in 3 was best, but I don't know. So we have A7 4 4 7 2 8 A6 1 6 5 6 8 4 A5 4 8 2. I wonder if Deli like me didn't notice he could just take in 2. Because like I didn't notice in a game against Deli. I can't like go like wow you didn't notice. And it took me a bit to notice here too. It's the kind of thing you just sort of 4 is the square you assume they have play in, and often you don't bother to check. I don't think that's the case, but it is possible. And Deli plays 6A19 in 9. I'm going to start bringing up the solver just out of curiosity, because this game was very chaotic for me. I want to see how promising 2 was. I thought 2 looked really promising, but I also thought it was complete chaos, so easily could have been like losing. I feel good about what I thought was promising last game. I think it was mostly on point. So, hopefully for me, hopefully my instincts are good. I don't think I'm a great calculator at the moment, but hopefully my instincts are still high end. But I think Cliffy doing a really nice job of just creating difficulties in, a little bit weird ways. And this converted back into like just a nice L for Cliffy, but it converted back from an adjacent corner that was pretty odd. So Deli starts in 7, Cliffy plays in 1. Now the solver will take a while to evaluate that. Deli plays in 4. This is not losing. Cliffy plays in 2. That seemed the normal reply. And there are 5 ties after 2. So my guess was Odin in 3. Odin in 3 did tie. Deli played Dark Anima in 9. This loses. Okay, Deli did not find a tie. I thought Odin in 5 lost, and indeed it did lose. Okay, but I thought Odin in 3 was a tie, and that would have been a good way to hold. But there were a bunch of other ties as well. Anything in 3 actually tied. Basically, the answer was to go in 3 here on move 5. What about my move in 2, though? Was that any good? I wanted, I think, Odin 2. There were a bunch of ties. I mean, it was probably better than the game continuation, but not crushing. Yeah, so I'm not sure what should have been done there then. 2 seems better. And instead went for a very dangerous path. Let's see if we can find Cliffy's win. I've closed the thing. The appealing squares to go in general, I think, are 3 and 8, but maybe 5 is worth considering as well. Let's do 5 first, just because we should be able to rule it out more quickly. Yeah, so anything you put in 5 can be taken from 8, and you have no double captures in 6, so 3, 6, 9, 9 sweeps you. So it's not in 5. Okay, good to rule something out. Let's do 8 next. I like doing the more interactive moves first. Any card you play, at least single captures in 8, but let's start with the double capture. Say Cain in 8, you go up 8 to 2. If Deli plays Odin 5, he makes it 5-5. But then there's Len. Okay, so we saw 8, 7, 3, 9, 8. I didn't get to this one yet. But there is a 3, 6, 9, 9 as well. 3, 6, 9, 9, and 5 should hold here. Yeah, that's a straightforward hold. So this wasn't the answer. If he went 3A, 5, 8, then 3, 6, 9, 9, and 5 works. 3, 6, 9, 9 should work against anything. Nothing combos it, and Odin sweeps the cards it needs to. Yeah, okay. So 3, 6, 9, 9, and 5 holds against anything in 8. So I think we're left with 3 as the option. Could Cliffy have won with 3? This is going to be hard for me to see with other moves played now, but my guess is 3. I'm gonna go check because I want to be able to keep up with the game, and moves are likely to come in kind of quickly now. No. We should find it. We should find it ourselves. If Cliffy played 2, 9, 6, 9 in 3, then he still leads 6-4. And if Deli plays Odin in 6, he has 8, 7, 3, 9, and 8 then, and 3, 6, 9, 9 only double flips on the last turn, and that comboed through 9 to flip 6. Alright, my official guess is 2, 9, 6, 9. I forget her name, because FF13 is not very good. I think I like it more than FF12, though. I won't fight anyone over that, but I think, yeah, Deli does go 3, 6, 9, 9, 5. Let's check what it was. 29693. Yeah. Yeah. And if a3, 5, a6, then 8. Yeah. Okay. So dangerous game for Deli. I think he didn't cleanly get anything to work here. I think this is basically a game where just like, and this is usually a good player's lose. I think his brain was just muddled on this. Like the lines never worked clear, and he couldn't clarify it into something, which is a worrisome sign if you are rooting for Delhi to take the whole tournament. Um, yeah, because he wasn't really getting games like this in TTAC. He wasn't really getting games like this. Yeah, and even like when he goes out in Ultimisia to meet us, uh, those games don't look like this. And he only loses once, of course, there. But the game he loses doesn't really look like this. This game looks like a game I play when my brain just never clicks with the position. And so my goal in general is to minimize the number of positions my brain can't click with and steer the game towards positions my brain does click with. But this very much feels like a game where it didn't click. Which happens to us all, but you want to minimize how often it happens. And usually when top players are at their best, which is not to say we won't see tremendous things from Delhi moving forward, but usually when top players are at their best, very much including Delhi, you don't really see games like this. The losses tend to be from positions that look worse than this looked after one. So they played 2, 9, 6, 9, and 6. Delhi plays 8, 3, 5, 8, and 3. And 3, 8, 5, 8 remaining. 5, 5 tie. Two somewhat dangerous games for Delhi. The previous one, I think, not his fault at all. This one, I think he made some errors. Cliffy didn't convert. Again, Cliffy makes normal, natural moves, but often the specific calculation isn't there. Right? Which means he can play quickly and well. It's kind of reminiscent. Actually, maybe this is a good analogy. Cliffy and Demonic Avenger. Demonic played very quickly, and he often played moves that to me felt like that can't quite work. This like feels like it walks into stuff you can't have taken the time to check. Like I can play big setups on the diagonal. I have captures that like and then I wouldn't it was really hard to actually find the ways to punish. He had these really good instincts and it felt like the calculation didn't always justify it, but he played some moves that felt like they required more calculation than he could have possibly spent, but also it was really hard to punish those moves, and most of the time you couldn't. Most of the time he had gotten it right. And so and they both were players who kind of quickly jumped through from players who were kind of new players who people didn't know. This is Demonic in, 2008, 9. This is Cliffy in 2023. To having a really tremendous tournament run where Cliffy's run was to the semifinals of Triad Wars 14, 15? 15, it must be 15. And Demonic ends up winning Rhinoa on a team with Slash of Time. And he has some other deep result around there. He's like a semifinals and I forget what, but something. And then Demonic basically leaves. So hopefully Cliffy doesn't leave. But I think we're sort of seeing a similar type of player who has just really solid feel for the game in a way that is willing to make some moves that are at least not instinctively obvious to me, but tend to be pretty decent moves, or tend to be moves that in practice play well, but doesn't have the kind of full calculation to be able to compete at length at the top level. But a really promising player. I've liked. I mean, I don't like this move in one, but I've liked the positions he's gotten out of these moves. And I wouldn't have looked for his move in two last game, but his move in two got him a really good position. I'm supposed to be cleaning the bathroom today, so I have to stop sometime soon because I do have chores. But um, just gonna reply to some messages here. You can look at the opening position. Should be up for you. Is it up for you? It is. Beautiful. So you're distracted. You have your toy. All right. Delia's first turn again, so per usual, we'll check Cliffy's hands first. A to the left, 7 to the right, A down, A up. I sense a rightward weakness. Now Deli has a leftward weakness, so, we might not be able to do much with this. Hmm. Are you over dependent on any specific card? Uh, Deli said, waiting for Waz analysis of Deli, what the fuck were you thinking? So I sent Deli, what the fuck were you thinking? And asked if that was one of those games where the numbers don't click. And he's saying the numbers just aren't clicking today. So, yeah, he said a bit worrisome, which is very similar to what I've been saying. So this is not a day Deli is sharp, and that's dangerous. Okay, can we play just any big corner and just force it through? Like, can we brute force 3-9-A2? Because we can combo a 5 facing to the right. We can't combo a 7 facing to the right. This hand is also not that clean. So, do you have to go the defensive side, 6A, 5, and 4? I hope not. It doesn't direct the game how you want it to. I I know some players would play that, and I might end up. So I should say, I often complain when someone makes a move like 6A, 5, and 4, and I'm like, there must have been something better there. And then you look at my games, and like sometimes I'll play 6A, 5, and 4, and it'll be because I looked around for something else and was like, god damn it, there's nothing better here. I have to settle for this move. Um, but when someone else plays it, I haven't seen them do the thinking to rule out other things, so I assumed they did it because they wanted to, not because they got frustrated there were no other options. And so if you think a bunch here and you end up on 6A, 5, and 4, and you don't speed play it, but you do really look for other options, then I shouldn't have a problem with it. Because I didn't see the thinking, I still do. It's kind of a form of fundamental attribution bias, which this isn't quite what it is, but I think it's the useful takeaway of it. It's pretty close to what it is. When we do something good, like when a person does something good, they tend to attribute it to like a characteristic of themselves. Like I did good at this because I am smart or brave or, strong or whatever, right? Like I got this work done because I am good at working, right? It is treated as something that is you did something good. It is because you have some fundamentally good trait. And if you fail at something, it tends to be I failed because this thing happened, right? Because my brain wasn't working that day, or because I just heard this really bad news and that was messing with me, right? When something succeeds, you also find this if you look at people's pay. If say pay goes up, people will attribute it to, well, I am good and worthy and pay should go up. Incidentally, like almost everyone should have higher pay, right? I'm not making claims that people are being underpaid here. You can look at how much money people make for the corporations they work for and how much less of a cut of that they get than they used to. We don't need to get into that, but I don't want to. I don't want to sneak myself into some positions here I don't believe in. But people will genuinely attribute pay increasing to traits they had. Well, the comparison case won't really be relevant here, so let's move on from that example. Deli goes for the big corner. Again, he has supported it with a double number. He had a starter somewhat like this in the previous game, where he went for a big corner and just has the recaptures. For some reason, I'm not really looking at these starters today, and I really should be. I looked at 3-9-A2, where the opponent could capture and we could combo back, but I didn't look at 9A, or we couldn't really combo back, but I didn't look at 9A52, where if they capture, we can simply recapture. Kind of silly from me, but that's okay. I just really didn't want to go on the left side of the board, but the other big corner I considered was on the left, so I am full of shit. Back to fundamental attribution bias. When a person does something good and or successful, we will attribute it to a trait we have, to our, quality of character. On average, in general, instinctively. People tend to do this. When something goes wrong, we tend to attribute it to some specific part of the situation happening. When good things happen, it is because of some good general feature of myself. When bad things happen, and you can also, it's very easy to find this in studies where people basically tell you you are playing a fixed card game or fixed whatever, where you get a big advantage or not at random. And the people who got the big advantage and then went on to win in, kind of the interviews afterwards will go, well, I earned it. I would have won anyway. They will attribute it to their personal character, even though they were told, and their personal skills, even though basically this was a random game where who had the huge advantage that was necessarily going to win was determined randomly. Even knowing that, when they have in fact gone on to win the game with a huge advantage, they will feel like they did something, which tells you a lot, I think, actually, about the mentality of cheaters and how people could feel fulfilled in their successes while cheating at things. Is when it goes right, you still, or most of us, not all and not in all situations, have this instinct to be like, yes, I earned that, even when you know you didn't. But when we lose, we go, well, it was because of this, this, and this. And we rarely go, I lost because I am dumb. Or when we do, it's a miserable thing, right? It's a really depressing thing. Incidentally, when I've been working at chess recently, I'm so excited to find places I screw up. It's great. It's so hard to improve at that game. And when I find something like, yes, I am definitively bad at this, here is something I did not notice, I was not aware of, I actually have a way to improve now, I have a clear path to do something better. That's genuinely awesome. And I'm really glad that have become a person better at appreciating that. Because I used to be not so good at that. It's great if you are trying to get better at something to find all the places you're screwing up. It is so great. And it can be hard on the ego because we want to feel I am great at this already. But if we want to improve, it's just so important to be able to go yes, I screwed up this, this, and this. That gives me things to look at. Maybe there's a pattern to mistakes I'm making. Maybe I can get better at this difficult thing. And that's awesome. So I think these are bad and harmful traits, obviously, that I'm talking about. So when we see someone else screw something up, we tend to do the reverse or do well at something. When someone else screws something up, we tend to assign it to their character. We tend to be like, yeah, that person just doesn't work very hard, right? In the same way that if we did successful at something, we go, yes, I'm good at working hard, or I'm smart, or whatever. We tend to attribute for other people negative things to their character and positive things, at least if we are remotely prone to jealousy or not positive about that person. If they're your best friend and they do great at something, there's a good chance you'll go, yeah, great for them, that's awesome, they are awesome at this. But if there's someone you don't like, you're probably the further they are from someone you sort of think of as yourselves, the more you're going to react with when they do something badly, that is because they're bad, right? You're set to think they are bad, and so them doing bad at something must be because they are bad. And when they do something well, it's something specific to the circumstance. Oh, they just happen to be good at that type of problem, but they're not good at these other types, right? For ourselves, sorry if this was a huge and useless tangent, but for ourselves, we do good, it's because we are good. We do bad, well, something specific was going on. When it's someone we don't like, they do good, it's because something specific was going on. They do bad, it's traits of themselves. And what we really should understand to better evaluate the world around us and better see what's going on is it's some of both, right? When I do something good, it is somewhat because I have these skills, and of course it's somewhat because of whatever specific things were going on. When someone else does something, I don't see those specifics. That's why this is so easy to do. When something goes wrong for me, I see all the specifics. I've been through the things. I know my brain wasn't working well that day. I had a headache or whatever, or something crappy happened and I was kind of disturbed about it. But if someone else, I don't know that like everyone has their problems and stuff happening and their stuff to deal with, but I don't see other people's things to deal with. So it's hard for me to say, well, they're going through something, and very easy for me to say, well, they're bad at this if they screw it up, right? And so it's very easy to end up in this kind of thinking, but we got to end up there. This is a weird analogy, but there was a piece by Kevin Love, a basketball player, in the Players Tribune talking about his depression, where it kind of the main point of the piece, but it's a very good point, is like everyone's going through something, and what you're going through isn't necessarily, but let's say what you're going through is visible to you, but what anyone else is going through is incredibly hard to see, and just this recognition that everyone's going through something. Incidentally, 39A2 in 1 might be fun here. Might not. It doesn't set up 2. For some reason, I decided that set up 2. I turned it into 3AA2 in my head in 1. We haven't talked about the position almost at all. But I think it's really important. I think, like, you see someone else having a bad game. It's say in triple triad. Let's make this actually about what we're talking about. You could go, they are bad. Or you could go, things aren't clicking with them today. This just happened to be a bad game. I've seen lots of other games. You know, this just happens to be a game that things aren't clicking well on. And we all have those situations, and we all have those, and it's just you've seen, I mean, I've seen in the message in chats over the years many times, someone goes something like, well, that player is not as good as this other player because I saw them play this bad game once, or I saw that other player win so much more beautifully. And like, A, small sample size, but B, like, we don't know what was going on there, right? We just don't know. It's like, and it's so easy to be, well, this player I think of as the best. Whenever they play well, it's because they're the best. And this other player who I think of as not as good, whenever they play well, well, that one didn't count. It wasn't where I counted, or their opponent screwed up, or whatnot. The chess candidates are happening as I record this, and it's just very obvious to see if you go on the chess Reddit, which I have now just admitted to sometimes going on. But if you go on the chess subreddit and certain players have good results, everyone's like, yes, they're great. They, played so good. But of course, to win a chess game, your opponent has to screw up. And when the unliked person wins, they go, wow, they got so lucky, their opponent collapsed, right? For some, it's a miraculous escape, and for some, it's lucky the opponent collapsed. And like, there can be differences. Like, you can look at the games and be like, yes, I think this position was more difficult than that position. Though I think, at least in this tournament, if you look at the actual positions and think about playing them, I think it's kind of the opposite of what people on the Reddit have assumed would actually be difficult. But that's just my instinct. I might be wrong here. But you see it all the time where, like, the good guy gets lucky. Oh my god, they're a genius to have saved this. The bad guy gets lucky. Wow, they're so lucky. It's so unfair. And I shouldn't like present this like I don't do it all the time. Magnus Carlsen has been the best player in the world for about 14 years at this point, 13, 14 years, and was world champion for 10 of those years. And I never liked him, right? So when he was coming up and he was playing a style I didn't like, it was always, these players just always crumble against him. They shouldn't. They don't blow these positions against other people. But the thing was, he actually was putting on more pressure than other people, which is why people were collapsing against him, losing to him in positions they wouldn't lose to other people, was because he was putting on more pressure for longer. And I was like, he's so lucky, this guy. I hate him. He's so lucky. He's not as good as everyone thinks. And like, he was better than I thought, right? He may not have been as good as everyone else thought. He may have been, but like, he was definitely better than I thought, right? My predisposition, my negative predisposition towards him through not enjoying his games, meant that I systemically underestimated how well he was actually playing them. Now, we are almost an hour into this video, so I think I'm allowed to go off on these weird tangents. But I think it's a really important part of thinking about the world in a kind of honest way, is to realize the internality of others is invisible to us. And rather than kind of assuming they don't have it, or that it's less important or less impactful on them, we should assume a lot of what we see in the results or actions of others is based on an internality we don't have perspective on. And, the closer we are to them, maybe the more perspective we have. But the more distant, the less perspective we have. And so when we attribute everything to who they are in some broad way based on our interpretation of their actions, we're gonna be missing something. Okay, so I hadn't thought much about this position. I was assuming if Delial was going to block a square next to his starter, he would block 4 rather than 8, because Cliffy had the capture in 4 but not in 8. But Cliffy, just like the last game, used up his capture, right? He didn't try to keep that power on the board. He was happy to just use it up. Which again strikes me as like a demonic like feature of plays a move that has this useful impact, feels a little short-sighted to me, but probably just still works and like is a good move. It's just not the kind of move I value, or it's the kind of move that I feel like this requires a lot of calculation and is quite risky to play. And demonic could make those moves really quickly and make them really well. And again, I think Cliffy might be a similar kind of player. I wish I had examples of demonic games in the modern era. We have one tournament of him playing. He got Deli in the first round. Deli beat him. It's not a big sample. But I think he was a really interesting player in a way kind of similar to Cliffy, and both with that early tournament success. I like this analogy. Let me know if you like this analogy. I'm not saying Cliffy's as good as Demonic or that Cliffy can't be better than Demonic was or anything like that. I'm just saying I noticed they both play quickly. They both play moves that to me feel not wrong as much as committal. Like a move that, and you can see Cliffy's already picked up a card, a move that uses up a card that has a lot of value for later, right? A move that has potential setups against it, or just strikes me as in some way there's some complexity to playing this move that I could not imagine playing this move near as quickly myself. It would take more work. But yet, a really good feel for these moves, and as we can see in these last 2 games, and these have been 2 very interesting games from Cliffy, he has gotten really significant pressure and attacks out of playing this way, right? I think he was better in the first game we looked at today, which I guess is game 3 of their match. Yeah, so they played 2 games before today. So the first game of today was game 3. The timeout was game 3. Cliffy had the advantage off his reply to the starter, which I think was a really good reply. And game 4, I think Cliffy played a poor reply, but nonetheless got a serious initiative off it. And the solver says it wasn't lost or anything, so when I say a poor reply, I'm probably just wrong in the same way that I could easily be wrong about Demonic. He played this reply I wouldn't have seriously considered, that wasn't losing, and got a winning advantage out of it, though he wasn't quite able to convert here. So, obviously, like, I've made a million videos about Deli and talking about Deli. Nice to talk more about Cliffy, who I haven't talked as much about. But I think this is similar to what Demonic was doing. So the main line here, let's say, is 6A, 7, 4, and 6. Deli goes up 6, 4. 9, 6, 5, 7 in 5. Combos 2 cards back. Cliffy's up 6, 4. 3, 9, A2 in 4. Flips 5, making it 5, 5. And then... Oh, then, yeah, my bad. Then Cliffy has the same wall in 1. I hadn't noticed the same wall. So... I guess probably better is 6A, 5, 5 in 2. Making it 5, 5. Yeah, that should tie. Okay, so 6A, 7, 4, and 6 to me looks like a tie and no more. Is there a way to play for more here? Some moves that come to mind. 3, 9, A2 and 6 instead. 3, 9, A2 and 5. I don't think there's much in 4, and I don't think there's play in 2. Yeah, I don't really believe in those squares. So I would think the three moves to strongly consider are 6A, 7, 4, and 6, which I decided was a tie. If I didn't calculate it completely, apologies. 3, 9, A, 2, and 6. Now the upside of that move is it keeps 6A, 7, 4 in your hand, which potentially is combos if 9, 6, 5, 7 lands in 5. And you have a combo against A4, 7, 4, and 5. You have a combo in 4. Yeah, so if 3, 9, A2, and 6, if they play A4, 7, 4, and 5, you have 6A, 7, 4, and 1, and 6A, 5, 5 has the combos both ways. So you win there. So 3, 9, A2, and 6 might be tricky. And if 9, 6, 5, 7, and 5, maybe you don't have it there. And if 5, 7, 3, A, and 5, not sure about that one either. So there's one trap with 6, with 3, 9, A2, and 6, but it's probably not that good a trap. What about 3, 9, A2, and 5? I guess they just have the combo in 6, like they have a plus wall in 6, and it's really hard to imagine you have much after that. Yeah. So unless like you've checked it more deeply than I have and realized it loses, I'd probably play 3, 9, A2, and 6, because I think that's the move that has the most trap potential. Like if you play 6A, 7, 4, and 6, how are they not going in 5? And if they go in 5, you don't win, unless I've missed everything, in which case, again, apologies. And so, like, if you go in 6 with Bahamut, I don't see how you have winning chances. But if you go in 6 with 3, 9, A2, again, unless it loses, I haven't checked everything, but it's hard for me to think it loses. But unless that loses, then I think that at least has trap potential. Is it much of a trap? No. But 2 of their cards landing in 5 are a little scary, and one of them I think actually loses. So maybe it's something. I'm going to see if I've gotten messages on the Discord. But I think how Cliffy plays is really interesting. I think it's a tricky style to play against. Like, he plays these early strong corners that seem committal to me, but also put real challenge on the opponent. We've seen that in every game, right? He met a starter in 3 with a strong corner facing out from 2. He met a starter in 7 with a strong corner from 1. This is a little like Bot Club Spade in a way. You know, he's playing these strong corners, willing to concede some power, and then he moves into kind of standard games of basically taking stuff from generally the right squares with reasonably high numbers out facing. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it seems very Bot Club Spadey to me in a way as well. Though maybe not with certain of Bot Club Spade's weird eccentricities. What's going on? All right. So what's funny, this is, okay, Deli goes 2 because I cannot predict anything. Good to know. So how did this game go? 9A, 5, 2, 7, 5, 2, A, 9, 3. Okay, 5, 8, 7, 7, 8, 7, 5, 5, 8, 9, 6, 8, 5, 5, 2. So I assumed this was nothing because Cliffy does in fact have a good recapture in 6. But it probably just lines up very similar to previous lines, where, like, if Cliffy plays 6, you play 5. Like, we're getting the same structures as before, just slightly changing who controls which cards. And all of these looked pretty drawn. So, like, if Cliffy goes 6, Deli goes 5, right? Cliffy going 6 goes up 6-4. Deli going 5 puts him up 6-4. Then Cliffy takes one thing at the end and is safe. But it's pretty easy to take one thing at the end and be safe. Cliffy goes 1, and goes 1 quickly. Does not recapture the card. Okay. But now Deli can go 4 with 3 9 A 2 maybe. Can he go 4 with 3 9 A 2? Isn't that just a win? Am I making things up? Because he has the same wall in 6. So he has this huge threat in 6. So anything in 5, 6 flips 9 and 8. And potentially 5 as well. And if anything in 6, Bahamut's too good there, and there's no captures in 6 anymore. All right, I think Cliffy has thrown this one. Also, Deli might be able to just play in 6 first. No, you don't want to play in 6 first. But just go in 4, and I think it's over. Weird series. All right, Deli advances. I hope Deli plays better than he did today in future rounds, because I do root for Deli, and because I think he will need to. Which again, it's not to denigrate Cliffy's performance, who did I thought really nicely today. I think if he just goes in 6 here, he probably ties unless I'm missing everything, which I might be. Who knows? Yeah, Deli goes in 4. Just as I was saying, like, you got to go 3 9 A 2 and 6. That's the one thing that gives your opponent a way to screw up. Deli goes in 2, which I thought did not give the opponent a way to screw up, but it did, and I missed it. All right, congrats to Deli, advances to the semifinals. Again, I think for Sakiyama, he'll have to be sharper than he was today, but he certainly can be much sharper than he was today. So I'm not too worried on that front. We all have our bad days. That's the whole thing we've talked about the whole video. And like, yeah, we all have our bad days. Not just you, dear listener. You're not the only one where that happens to. Everyone's got something going on. The wise words of Kevin Love. It's actually a pretty good article. I tend to not love stuff in the Players Tribune. It goes up and down. Some's great, some isn't. Depends also a lot on how invested you are in the player. I don't have any kind of depression, but it is something interesting for me to read about. And often you run across interesting perspectives on things from people talking about their experiences. So yeah, I recommend Kevin Love's Everyone's Going Through Something. I don't remember if that's what it's called, but that's the big takeaway. And don't do fundamental attribution bias. Realize other people have interiority as well. They have stuff going on. It's, not everything they do is, attributable to some big trait about them. Not everything good you do is attributable to some big trait about you. Sometimes you just got really lucky. I get lucky all the time. If I have a 30% shot to get lucky, I get lucky 30% of the time. And, if I do an activity once a day for 100 days, 30 days I got lucky or whatever, right? So, yeah. And in general, how I look at stuff is more like, let's say I am 80% favorite to beat someone. Like, my skill gets me to be 80% favorite. If I win, that 80% essentially becomes 100. I did win, 0.8 becomes 1. And I attribute 0.8 of that to my skill and 0.2 to luck. If I lose, well, I got 0.8 unlucky, right? If I win, I got 0.2 lucky. It takes more bad luck to lose, but like, if I am this skill, this is the skill I've worked at to get something, my actual results in a small sample are going to be more about luck than about that skill. Now, if it turns out like I keep losing, then it probably turns out I wasn't really 80% at all, and I was misestimating my skill. But if I happen to lose once when I estimated myself to be 80%, or even twice, yeah, that's fine. Sometimes the coin flips go really bad for you. All right, I think we should probably let this play out and see the final position, but our result is determined. There we have a move, 9 6 5 7 5. We'll see 6A 7 4 and 6, and 5 7 3A remaining. and it's currently 6-4. This will flip 2 cards, so a 6-4 win for Deli, who advances with a 2-0 win, but a very difficult 2-0 win over Cliffy, who I thought really that last game especially was pretty indicative of how dangerous Cliffy can be. And we can see how he made his really deep run in Think Drydoor's 15. And I'm hopeful to see more from him, because we didn't get Demonic, but now I think Cliffy is not necessarily Demonic 2.0. 2.0 always implies they're better. I like to joke that Brandon Ingram in basketball is Kevin Durant 2.0. This is because I don't like Kevin Durant, and I think it's funny to call Brandon Ingram Kevin Durant 2.0. But obviously, Kevin Durant's way better than Brandon Ingram. But if you called Brandon Ingram Kevin Durant like 0.3, that would be kind of confusing because Kevin Durant came first. And it sort of would feel like, oh, this was the prequel to Kevin Durant, but no, it's an inferior sequel. What do you do with that? And this is not to say anything about inferior or superior. It's just to say these are two different players. I don't know how they'll stack up when whatever. But Cliffy, I think, interestingly demonic-like player, and fun match here. Level 9's really rough. I think it's one of the easier levels to lose your place on. And finally, to end this video, please change the rule set for the finals, please. Thank you.